are you doing, beloved?
Attention, attention, my black brothers. What I want y'all to do right now is take out the do-rag, the silky, tie it down. I want to see the waves glistening. If you got nappy hair, pick it. Don't let nobody discourage you.
Ariel.
Black boy, black boy.
Hey.
Funny seeing you here.
I know. It's been like a year.
It has been a year since we've been on the mics in front of our listeners and viewers. OMG. How are you?
Celebrate good times. Come on. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, we here.
I don't know the lyrics. Is it? I'm not.
That's all I know. That's all this can get out of me.
Yeah. Heard you bitches was looking for me. Here I
Okay.
go. That's what
Here I go.
Here I go. Oh my God. Okay, wait. Hi, sister. I miss
Hi.
you.
I miss you too.
Okay. We've been talking, but I'm just so excited to be in front of the podcast with you.
I know.
What's going on? What's going on?
You know, life's just lifing. I mean that in like a good way for the most part. Like I'm feeling good. I'm really excited to be back. It's insane that it's been a year. And I can remember like the last episode that we did and where I was mentally and just sort of in my life. And I won't even say that things were like terrible when we did our last episode because they weren't. But I was just in a completely different space. And now I'm feeling like super rejuvenated and excited and super motivated. So I'm glad to be back. I'm so glad we're here with our listeners. It's great to hear your voice over a mic again. I must admit, it's great to hear my own voice through a mic.
No, it's the same. I've been like, of course, you know, dealing with the moods of life and roller coastering, but for the most part as well, life has been pretty good throughout this hiatus. And I think it was very much well needed for us. But of course, we're going to get into it in this episode. But we have to do our thing. We have to do our thing.
Oh, man.
What is up, everybody? It is your boy, Lord Devery.
And I'm Derwin King.
And welcome back to That Black Boy Joy, where we create a space where black boys can be themselves and
so much more.
Girl, you thought I was going to forget to do that? You thought I was going to forget that?
I was waiting on it.
I'm not going to forget that. I was in my head like, how do we do it? Do we just jump into it? But I was like, no, let's just sit in this moment.
It's like riding a bike.
Each other. Yeah, first of all, I'm going to let y'all know this now. We have not been in front of our mics in so long that our technical difficulties were through the roof before we started.
We had to troubleshoot.
Okay. And we got it together. As you can see, I have a little bit of cobwebs. I have to dust off the mic. You know, Derwin had to do some test 1, 2, 3s.
I was going to say, because my shit looked just the way it did when I left it.
Oh, okay. But we are super excited to be talking with you all today. We just have really missed you all, and we definitely have a lot to talk about in this episode. But of course, we do want to introduce ourselves again. We want to talk about all the things that's been going on with our life. So this week, we actually have ourselves as the Black Boy Joy Spotlights. I think that would be the most appropriate for us to come back into the podcast with ourselves as the spotlights. I think we've never done that before because it's been our show. So I definitely wanted us to shout ourselves out and, you know, be proud of us as amazing black boys who have been doing this for so long. And I'm just really excited to be here with you. So first off, I'll shout myself out, you know. Yes. I don't know if I left off with you all, but I am a kickballer, which we just won our championship this past
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm a volleyballer, and we just actually got runners up in our division. So I'm really super excited about that. Been taking on a lot of more leadership roles in my job. So really just proud of all of those things.
Snaps.
And then just like ultimately just like cultivating the relationships and just like enhancing the relationships that are already in my life. So specifically my friends and family. Just really looking to them for support in these times when I'm over here like, girl, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But just wanted to, talk about what's been going on. We're going to go into it a little bit more. But Derwin, you are the spotlight.
Yeah, I'm gonna give myself big ups for really living life this year. I was really intentional about doing some new things with myself, having new experiences, opening myself to love and romance in a way that I haven't before. It's not that I've never dated before, of course, but that like I forced myself to go through these romances. I went through about 3 this year, and I was very present in all of them and very like much active in opening myself up and being more vulnerable than I've ever really been with men because
Yeah.
trusting men is crazy.
Okay.
um and then also like I've been really goal oriented this year, and I've really proven myself to myself that I am capable of setting goals and like reaching them, and of being consistent in the way that I approach those goals. So I've been really proud of how I've shown up for myself, and I'm really proving that like I can do all the things that like that nagging voice in the back of my head has been telling me that I can't. So shout out to me for being that bitch, you know?
Yes, will forever be that bitch. No, I'm like so happy. When we were talking before we were prepping for the launch of the podcast again, I was just like, my sister's been over here doing the work. When you all are watching this, the podcast may look a little different. With this hiatus, we wanted to come back, refresh, and with a rebrand. So we are the same old gals. However, we just have we just got a little bit of tweaks, a little bit of
Rejuvenation.
rejuvenation. So when you all are seeing this, you all are probably going to be officially seeing our new logo and brand and more things to come with the podcast. So we're super excited about that.
Nah, motherfuckers is back, so let's hit it.
We got it. So first of all, let's go into this podcast episode. It's just going to be essentially the reintroduction, what has been going on with us, how life has been, why we went on the hiatus, what are we doing now, and really wanting to be honest and transparent with our listeners and viewers. There's been a lot that's been happening with us emotionally, personally, and we definitely just wanted to talk it out. Me
You
and
damn
Derwin have
right.
we've held so many conversations for the podcast because we talk, of course, but we're just like, oh, we want to do it for the show, but we of course talked it all through and all that stuff. So today we're going to definitely get into all of that. So
Finna
first of
open up
all,
like a hooker's coochie on a Friday night, child.
okay, it's payday. But I think the first thing we want to talk about is we've talked about where we've been on the hiatus and what we've been doing since. But I definitely want to talk about what made us essentially both go into this mindset of having to take a break with the podcast. So first off, let me just say with me, right? At the time, I was definitely tired per se with just life, with the podcast, with the work, with just like overall where I was lifing at. And I immediately thought about what is one thing that I could put to the wayside. And it was the podcast, unfortunately. And
Whew.
that's a thing that I definitely need to work on, is putting my passion projects as a priority instead of thinking it is the first thing that I can like put to the wayside.
Well, name the things that you were doing that you felt at the time were more valuable, like in your life. Because what was happening? Because I know you, so I imagine you were assessing what your immediate goals were and sort of how they were paying off. So, what outweighed the podcast for you at that time that you were just like, we can
Mm,
take a step back?
niggas.
Oh.
I'm gonna just be honest. I was at a space where I was dating serially and yes, girly, I was
So
serially
it was
dating.
dick and ass? You chose dick and ass over your girl? No, I'm just playing with you.
No, 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 no. There was no. It was the good and pros and cons. So like with the pros, my time was more being prioritized over intimacy and spending time with other people.
Mhm.
also my job, as you know, I was starting to have to work in the afternoons, so I wasn't able to be as attentive to the podcast. And then also, like, it wasn't becoming fun anymore in that sense. Something that I really was like looking forward to do. Like, I was just like, ugh, it's just another thing to do. The podcast isn't really ideally where I want it to be. So it ultimately was the first thing of like, people take breaks. So, why not take a break and, ultimately do all those things? So it was, so, okay, twofolds with the dating part. Also, dating was terrible as well. So it was like doing all these dates, serially dating people, like really know, like, nothing being productive, but I'm just wasting time. Like, instead of me going on these dates, I could be actually shooting a podcast, or instead of me like trying to like cultivate these relationships that was very draining, I could be just doing a podcast. So it was like a combination of things, but it also was just like I started to just be overwhelmed with like the podcast in itself, and just like thinking that like I was being like I was starting to get like a sappy ass bitch. I don't know what
Aw.
it was. It was just like I was starting to be like,
I want to ask you, you said that it wasn't fun anymore. What made it not fun? Because I just remember the energy that we really had in 2019, and especially in 2020 when we found out that there was a way we can sort of pivot how we do the show to accommodate the pandemic. So what happened in 2022 that stopped making this fun for you? And I'm gonna agree with that sentiment. It stopped being fun for me as well. But
yeah,
like that wasn't a feeling I had when we were doing the show in 2019, 2020, and 2021. There were so many new experiences we were having. So I wonder what it was for you in last year that was like, this ain't fun.
yeah. I mean, I think it started to become we were just like churning out episodes. We were just like putting out things like back to back to back. I felt like we were really not getting breaks in between all of it. Like, I just feel like we were just like
Mm,
overproducing. Like, it was getting to a point like we were on a machine. And I think my Aries kicked in is when I'm in a pattern of some sort, I get really antsy. I'm just like, this is starting to become too routine. This is starting to become too complacent. I'm starting to feel too comfortable. So it
mm,
started to feel like that in itself. And then also I feel like, and I know this is something I talk about a lot, the progress. I wasn't seeing the progress that I wanted. And I think that's a conversation that we have. I didn't know what I even wanted for the show.
yeah.
I'm mad about the instant wanting this progress and wanting this like show to be something, but I didn't know what I wanted, if that makes sense. So I was like overwhelmed with like, well, I can prioritize relationships, like I can prioritize my job, I can prioritize like my sleep, like
Was your vision still clear about what you wanted at that time? Because I'm curious if our visions diverged. Because I think that my intention for like my time on the show has always, I think it's remained the same. We definitely are on the same page about like wanting to yield results from doing the show. We don't, nobody wants to
yeah,
do work in vain, right? Like, of course, we wanted to
yeah,
see the platform grow, like recognition happening, and an increase in sort of network, which I do think happens
yeah.
naturally. So that wasn't really a problem. I mean, obviously, we wanted to see some money come from this experience too. But I believe Crystal and Kid Fury let us know that you could be doing this for a long time before you ever see the payoff for that. So,
Mhm.
do you think that your vision was still clear by the time that we had taken that break?
I don't think necessarily. I think it was just getting as many people on the show as possible, and not really assessing the content that we were putting out. I think for me, it was like, okay, all these people want to be on the show, put them on the show, deal with it later. And I think that
Hmm.
I started to feel like it wasn't becoming like I originally said this was like an ode to my father. Like, it was like the conversation that I wanted to have that I was not able to feel confidently to have. And I think it started to become a show where it was like, oh, look how many people we can have on the show, and look at all these people that are on it. But it wasn't really like unpacking things in my head. I know our listeners may
Ooh.
have a different, perspective, but for me, I think it was like I'm trying to get all these people on the show to like build up our resume, but I still wasn't satisfied with what was in front of me.
That's interesting because I think I was feeling similarly, and I'm disappointed in myself for not being brave enough to have that conversation with you. Because obviously, like I'm thinking about it. I'm going through this experience, and I'm like, this isn't really as fun as it used to be, and I'm feeling like I'm just doing a lot of work and not really feeling the gratification it is. And I have to say that having something like a podcast is naturally gratifying because you are creating. Like, it is an opportunity for us to create, but at some point it did feel like we were doing less creating and more sort of like content making in a way
Mm-hmm.
that felt like impersonal. Like, it didn't feel personal to who we are or what we wanted, and I wasn't sure if we were moving in that direction because that's the direction you wanted to go, in. And I feel like if we had had the right conversation, if I had been
Yeah.
brave enough to say how I was feeling, or if you had been sort of honest, partially with yourself and then with me, if it's okay that I say that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
then we probably would have been having the right conversation to figure out where to go. And I don't regret taking the break at all, but I'm wondering
No.
if we had both had that conversation, how differently this would have looked.
Yeah.
Because I know that for me, the catalyst for walking away was when, my friend passed,
Mm-hmm.
being in a new space of grief that I had never been in before. People in my family have passed, but most of the death I had experienced prior to, that moment was expected. And then the only other time that there was a sudden death for me was when I was in Costa Rica. And, it had happened like at this point 8 years ago. So I had enough time to sort of, remove myself from that. And I barely knew him, even though he's still very meaningful in my heart.
Yeah.
Um, so I think with this one being such a close relationship in my life and me having to adjust to that new type of grief, in my mind, I was like, I simply don't have the space. I do not have the internal um, resources to do this show and it not give me the gratification that it once did. Like, this is now labor that I don't have the bandwidth to perform.
Yeah. I also want to tell you something. I don't think I've ever mentioned this to you. Was with that incident that gave me an excuse to walk away from the show, which is very
Mm.
hard to like admit because I am someone that I feel very hard having these conversations about like what the podcast isn't fun anymore. It's not, it's taking the joy out of me. So with that happening, it was like I know he's going to need time to heal, so this is the time when I can heal as well. But
Wow.
I didn't expect it to be the conversation because I remember when I asked you, I remember talking. I was late at night. I called you and I was like, "Hey, sis, I know you took some time. What are your thoughts about coming back?" And I remember you were like, I think I'm okay with where I'm at." And I was kind of shocked because I didn't expect that, but I also didn't want to say that like I was the same. Like I didn't want to come back to just because I was like in this mindset of like it was taking too much of my time up.
I really wish that you had, because I felt like I was disappointing you, and
Mm-hmm.
that was really difficult for me because I had a lot of guilt about how much grief was kind of taking me out of here, and I was just like, and I mean, this isn't. I'm not gonna put this on you because I have a
Yeah.
tendency to put these burdens on myself, right? Like, so in my mind, I'm like, I'm not showing up to the show the way that I need to, and now this thing has happened, and I am not strong enough to work my way through this grief and honor my obligation to my friend and business partner. And I was so like, when you called me, I was just like, I don't know how to tell him that I can't do this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I really was afraid that I was letting you down. um you're an ambitious person, and I know that about you. And I've respected what that has looked like in this endeavor. So for me to be the person who was like, I can't, come back and do this, I felt so disappointed in myself. And I just felt like I hadn't honored the commitment I made to you, to myself, and to the show by taking that break.
No, I think for me, first of all, I appreciate you being transparent in that space. I think for me, I didn't have the courage to be as transparent, and I think that's the thing that I needed to work on was I I knew I wasn't being the best at the podcast at a certain point. I think I was like just being very lax with it because I wasn't as as motivated. So I think I needed to be more upfront. Like I think I put a lot of responsibility on me because you're not the first person to walk away at the time from the podcast. So I started to internalize that I was the problem because I was like, maybe I'm not being a manager. Maybe I'm not being this assertive person. Maybe I'm not the type of person that can do this because this is the second time somebody has said that they wanted to take a step away, and yours was different
Mm.
than the first one because yours was a hiatus or it didn't have a time. The first one was like I'm done, thank you, whatever. So I think for me, I started to feel like okay, I used this as an excuse, but then it was like you didn't do your job as the person that created this platform to motivate this person to stay, and I felt like I was doing myself a disservice because I brought you into this and I didn't really fight for you to stay in it because I'm like, he's healing. But I also like just felt like I gave you too much, not saying too much space, but like I feel like I didn't like be like, hey, Derwin, like, this show. I don't know. I feel like I just, and it's my intrusive thoughts. I didn't feel like I championed for us. I feel like I was like, okay, you take your time. See you later. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but I think in my mind, I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like the light for me is like I'm feeling super sad. I've never felt this many emotions in this way so deeply, so profoundly, and without an end in sight before.
Yeah.
So for me, I was just like, I know there has to be, because I have to continue living, there has to be a light at the end of this grief tunnel. I don't even know what the light at the end of the podcast tunnel looks like because I have to get through this first. Like, I don't know how to show up and give this part of me that I've been giving so naturally for so long because I don't even know who I am now. Like, there was this genuine period where I was just like, I don't even really know how all the ways that I feel, So I didn't have the space to communicate an opinion or a thought, or I've halfway felt like my brain has stopped working.
Yeah.
And so I think you were probably sensing that, like, in my mind, it was a soft quit. Like, it was like I really don't know when I'm going to come back. So you can consider it a quit until you don't. Like, of course, I wasn't just like, I'm done, I'm finished, because I didn't want to feel that way. That wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I felt was happening.
Yeah. I think, no, I agree. I think that we had that on two different fronts, right? There was something that happened that took time away from you. And I think for me, I had imposter syndrome. I think I've done this before. I've done this with my podcast. Sorry, I've done this with my YouTube channel. I've done this with all my creative endeavors. I did this with photography. Stopped doing it because I think sometimes I create things with the gratification of others. And with the podcast, it's for Black men. It's to support Black men. But my mission is to owe to my father. So it's like sometimes those conflicting things didn't mesh because if this is an ode to your father, why are you not speaking about who you are? But you're having guests come on, which is perfectly fine. But I think I was starting to have two conflicting things because, like, as a transparent person, there are certain things that I didn't get as a child that I am looking for as an adult. And when I don't feel like I'm getting it, I grew up a selfless person, but then I still need to feel, those affirmations and things of that nature. So I think for me, it was ultimately I wasn't seeing progress. No matter how many people came on the show, it wasn't good enough. So I was like, nobody's paying attention, so we can just stop the show. And then with Derwin, with you having that incident that happened, I'm like, okay, we need to take a break. But I don't want to tell him that I'm not getting this instant gratification that I don't even know where it's coming from. I talked to my therapist about it and I'm still processing where this is, but it was just like, that is what happened. And then after, we had the conversation, I had to figure out what was next. Did I want to start the show? Did I want to stop the show indefinitely? Did I want to bring on the show with another co-host? Did I want to do it by myself? Because it got to a point, I think I went through my dark moment and I realized that I don't want to do what I've done with my other projects to this project. I put
Hmm.
so much work into this project. I really put my heart and soul into it, and I didn't want to put it to the wayside like I've done everything else because I was afraid of people not liking me.
I don't want you feeling like you have done yourself a disservice by putting other things down. I listened to people who I would say are on like tracks for success, right? And one thing they always mention is the pivot. Like there are going to be things that we pick up and that we put down because we're trying to find our creative and entrepreneurial like spaces. Like what is our direction? What's our path? What's our journey? And I've always commended you with being able to start those things, set and like have a vision for it. And, there's nothing wrong with pivoting out of them. And I think it is even more commendable that you were able to find a point where you were like, well, this thing I've put too much energy and too much, time and love into. So even if I'm pivoting, I'm not pivoting away from it. I'm pivoting inside of this endeavor. How can I turn this endeavor into something that will continue to work and that will work stronger and better in the meantime? And I even am proud of you for being able to imagine what that would look like outside of me, because I think that
Mhm.
shows your dedication to this platform.
It was very scary, right, to think of the show by myself. Because originally I had a co-host, and then they no longer wanted to be a part. So then I did episodes without them, and I did silent episodes, so solo episodes. Then I brought other people in, and then eventually you came apart. And I felt like at a point when I decided to be like, okay, I want to bring this back. Would people listen to just me? Were people interested in Devery, or were they interested in the conversation that Devery is able to have with others? Because I've always grew up in a space where I felt like people didn't want to pay attention to me, or I was invisible, so I want to pour into others. So it got to a challenge of, okay, Devery, you want to come back into this show. Are you ready to lead this without somebody else backing you in this type of space? And it was a conversation I had to really, really have, because I was like, you know, you have the potential, you have the capabilities. Why are you feeling that you cannot do this without somebody else in your space? And I think it
Yeah.
was because of growth trauma, like feeling invisible and feeling like all these other projects I've done, nobody really paid attention to, and that we became successful because it was a duo thing. And then even having a conversation of, okay, if I wanted to find another guest, who would it be and why? That was a conversation as well. Was I didn't know who else to fill the spot or add to the nuance of me, because we hadn't known each other for so long.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a relationship that had that much chemistry and history yet. So I'm like, I don't want to just bring on a random person and we're trying to figure out our groove and flow, when I had created this with this person already, and he knows me and I know him, and then I'm too afraid to do it by myself because I sometimes don't know who I am. So it
Mm.
just was like, that's what drew out this whole year process.
I have a lot of faith in you as a creator, because I need for you to never forget that, like, it isn't sure this show has become what it has become as we've worked together, right?
Yeah.
But it just wouldn't exist if you hadn't started off and put in the legwork for what this brand was going to look like, what it was going to mean, how you were going to
Yeah.
get it done. I mean, and you are something I've always really admired about you is your ability to execute. You are like, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to make it happen, right? Like, it me, I'll go through a number of things. If they can't be perfect, then sometimes I lose my ability to creatively problem solve. You are like, this thing is going to get done, so regardless of what happens, it's here, right? So
Yeah.
I definitely think that you are a person who deserves to be beheld, right? People should behold you. They should witness you. You have a story to tell. And I think, and I'm excited because I know this journey that you've been on in your personal
Yeah.
life. I think the more that you lean into that idea of telling your own story and being true to who you are, the more you'll feel like you can relish in those moments to be witnessed. And I know for a fact that people will come and witness you. It just has to be you. It has to be true to how you see, view, and feel yourself. And I have no doubt that like that will do you well moving forward.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, sister. You know, when I'll be like, oh, let's talk about somebody else. But in actuality, during the hiatus, I took a lot of time to love myself and not try to find an excuse to find my way to loving others, because I started to realize that a lot of the things that I did was for others, and I could not realize that like I created this project, I did this project, I wanted to do this. I sometimes forget that like I am great at executing, but keeping a momentum. So it's two different things. It's about, okay, you can start this, but can you finish it? And I think that's what I always had, that like I know how I can, if I want to do something, Devery is going to do it. But where is he going to find the drive and the determination to continue and not find an excuse to pivot? And I
Hmm.
think that was what I dealt with. And for me, it was, I have my insecurities about my self worth, and that's, you are afraid of learning and loving yourself because you didn't feel that type of space as a child. And I think that I grew up worrying about other people because I that was all that I had, was other people telling me something that I didn't even trust myself. So
Hmm.
it was just scary, just like coming to realization, like, Dev, you're going to do this. You know, you're going to come back. You're going to. And I think that's what made me go into the rebrand, right? This fresh take of the podcast. So when I realized that you weren't coming back in a while and for a minute, it was an excuse for me to be like, I've always wanted to restart the podcast and go back to what it originally was. Now let me do it. Now let me. And it was so funny. I did it I remember in the middle of the night, I could not sleep. And that's where I think my best ideas come from, was I literally was like, something is on the tip of my tongue and I cannot figure out what it is. I took out my notepad and was like, what is something that you have not been doing that you want to do? And it was like the podcast. It was like, okay, bitch, how do you want to do the podcast? Like, let's start from scratch. And it was really interesting because I started to realize like I still had that creative juice flowing. I just didn't know I had it because I was so finding excuses to like do it. And I was like, I love where we started. I love what we've done. But in order for me to have a clear mind and a clear heart, I had to make this some type of new type of feel to it. So that's when I started to be like, bitch, we need a new logo. I was like, we need a new logo. I need some people to be helping me with this, because I also realized that me and you ran into an issue. We did everything. We were the content creators. We were the producers. We were the social media. We was the talents. Fine. We was the. We did a lot of
Burnt
things. And I think,
out. That is a lot of work. Producing a podcast is a lot of fucking work.
and we loved it at a point. One point, we was
Yeah.
like, Derwin, what are we doing? What are we doing? How are we
And
doing this?
then our lives got more complicated.
I started a new job. I started to like date. I started to like get into like other things, and like I started to be like, bro, this is a lot. So I immediately started to use resources to like help with the podcast, and I realized I couldn't rely on you because you weren't there. So I was
Yeah.
like, Dev, this was a test for me. I was like, Dev, you gotta do what you done when your former co-host left. You still was able to move. You still was able to. And one thing about it was I never had no bad blood with you leaving the pod, stepping away. That was the one thing. Well, my first one, transparent, to be me and that person no longer speak. Partially probably because of the podcast, partially because of external other things. However, with you, I have so much respect for you, and I have so much grace that like you were always going to be able to come back to the podcast whenever you felt like, wherever I was at in the podcast, I was either going to be like, my bitch is coming back. We're going to pause. And I'm going to be honest, when I mentioned it to certain people, some people have reservations about allowing you to re-enter the space. And for me, I understand that as somebody that's an external view looking at, however, as somebody that like, they don't know our conversations. And one thing about me, I never speak about things that I have with an intimate friend because y'all can't have external views. But for me, I was like, this person has helped get this to where it has been. Yes, I created this. This is something but this person has put too much work and energy for me to no longer feel like this person is no longer have an access. And you were transparent with what happened with you. So I never had any issues with it. I remember I had somebody ask, could they like replace you? And I was like, there's not going to be anybody replacing. Okay, it's going to be as you, because one thing about it is you cannot replace my sister.
Okay. She's irreplaceable. Better
She's
know.
irreplaceable. But I wanted to tell you that because there's a lot of things I haven't like mentioned about it. But like with that rebrand, you were always in my pitch. You were always in my head. I was just like, when she is ready, always create a space where she is ready. So when there was logos being created, I didn't want me on the logos. I didn't want, certain things that just said me. I was like, there needs to be something that I can add my sister to it. And when I got that call, okay, I'm sorry. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, because it's so funny because I had a great summer. The summer was so restorative for me. I spent so much time in the water and in the sun, and I was just reminded of my own joy and the ways that I had access to it. And that was just such a coming back to myself moment. And I just remember thinking like, I have a lot of thoughts and I don't really have anywhere to put them anymore. And also just like, I miss creating something. I miss having something to call my own. I miss like having something to brag about, I mean, I've been bragging about the gym, but like everybody goes to the gym.
Because you've been in the gym, y'all. Y'all should follow my sister on social media. The body is a body. We both been in the gym.
Thank you.
My sister has been eating those girls up.
Oh, thank you, sister. But I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like I want to go back, but like, is Devery going to have me back? Like, I'm sure, like, and I knew you had done all that work, and I was just like, I don't even know if he's going to feel slighted that I had even taken a step back. Like, he probably has all these new ideas, and I don't even know if there's room for me anymore. So I was just like, let me just, eat some humble pie and ask my sister if she would be willing to have me back. Like, honey, I know I left you high and dry. I'm so sorry. But is there room for me to come back, honey?
Yeah. And bitch, when you called, it was so funny because I remember I was out at a vineyard and you called and I looked, I was like, girl, yes. I was like, let me first excuse me, that wasn't ladylike. I was like, first let me talk to the team that was behind my brand at the rebranding and stuff like that to see how we can do it. But like, we're going to bring you back in because the show, it was going to be me by myself or you with me. And it was either one of those things. And for me, I also knew that like you didn't I don't want to say you didn't leave off like you left off like it was incomplete. It wasn't like
that's true.
The show was
final. It never felt final.
It never felt final. It was this thing I felt. I was like, my sister is in grief right now. This is nothing to do with us personally. There's nothing to do. There is just things that there needs to have time to provide for each other. And while you are working on that, I am working on this. And I think so for me, it was never this thing. And also it was like there was a lot of delays in the podcast, which it was the grace of like I think God and just like timing that like it worked in my favor and your favor because so to be honest, the show was supposed to be coming back in April, okay, of 2023. However, with just some things, it didn't come out at that time, which I'm actually now looking at.
God's plan.
God's plan. But it was that. So when we had that conversation, I didn't think of you being like, I have to eat humble pie. I was in my head like, the show is always going to be a Derwin and Devery. It was going to be Devery or Derwin and Devery. So I wasn't looking at nobody else to be like permanent. It was going to be rotating people. But like for the most part, it was going to be Devery. Because I was like, I can't just try to find people to hide my insecurities on, if that makes sense.
Oh.
I was like, I can't keep doing that. Let me take up the space that I've been trying to give to others.
Yeah.
And give it to me and him. But yeah, no, I think for me, it was learning and pushing myself out of my uncomfortable space. And I think that definitely was by having those tough conversations with each other. I think about once we decided to come back as a team, we had to put everything out that wasn't clear on both parties. I know for me, there was a lot of things that I wasn't saying because I just was afraid of feeling like I was letting you down and letting the podcast down and letting myself down.
It's crazy that we both felt that way.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, when we started to have those conversations, I feel like we started to be like, oh, like it was like a weight. It wasn't just one person, because I feel like I'm always like, I'm so sorry I did this, but it was just like we both were like, this is what I contribute, this is how I contribute, and it was just like a sigh of relief. So I think for me, once we decided to come back and, you know, have that uncomfortable conversation, I think that's where, and all the disconnect, I think that's where we started to like weed through the grass and be like, this is the podcast. This is where we want to go. This is where we're trying to see, because we were really just trying to like teeter. It was like,
Well, I think we. What I've learned from hearing this conversation with you, I can't believe how. I mean, I knew that we have different perspectives about certain topics or whatever, but I can't believe that we were operating in this space thinking that the other was thinking something that they weren't, right? Like, I can't believe that I hadn't stopped to just say exactly how I felt to you. And I'm a little disappointed. I really am a little disappointed in myself that I didn't take the time out to even
girl,
give you enough credit that you would be able to receive the difficult things that I was feeling, and, you know, create space for me to feel that way without feeling slighted. Like, I don't know you to be that person anyway. So
yeah.
I just, my mind was just
And
like, Deborah's gonna hate me.
and it's the funny thing, because I felt the same way for you. Like we were like, and the funny thing about it is like me and you talk a lot. We will get on the phone and kiki, but we also will like hold it for the podcast. So it was like, where was that disconnect happening? Where we started to feel like we were hurting each other.
I think I know that for me, I was feeling disappointed with like what we had expected this would look like by this point hadn't quite happened, right? So I think part of it was an internalization of failure there. And then feeling like, well, I had my priorities at the time. I knew what my focus was. I moved to New Orleans, so I had to really focus on the things that I did, like the reasons that I moved here. And at that point, it was just like, well, I can't keep dedicating time doing this thing if it's not going to pay off. Like, I need my money. Like, you know, like I need, I need to make sure that the steps I'm making forward are going to actually add to my future. And I wasn't feeling that way, and I wasn't sure what to do about it. I didn't know who to blame. I didn't know what we were doing wrong. I couldn't really answer what I felt like the immediate solutions were. And I think that is true. If there's anything, I think of all the things I thought at the time, what was true is what needed to change was not going to change immediately. We absolutely needed to take a break. We didn't know we needed to take a break, but I think we felt it internally. I can't believe that the universe put us in a situation where we had to, but like the things that I think are going to assist us in moving forward, and one of them being perspective, we were not going to get by keeping our heads in the sand, continuing to dish out content. We needed to take a break.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think that was my thing as well. Was that I was starting to feel like we were getting lost in the show. We were starting
Yeah.
to like do things that we didn't have goals. Like we didn't really have the goals of what the year looks like. You know, we would talk about, okay, we want to have 20 guests this episode. Let's talk about, okay, how many. We didn't talk about like how, we didn't have those things. We were looking at
Was
like
without intention.
intention. And that's the thing. We were just like, okay, damn, we have 20 guests coming on. Let's take a 2-week break. Let's bring on another. Like we were, when we were not shooting, we were shooting. Like we were talking with people, meeting with reps. Like it was a lot of stuff. So we necessarily, and there was changes happening in our lives. Like I started a new job. You moved to New Orleans. You know, we had to look at the show as we're doing these things in 2 different areas now. You know, what Derwin wants on the show and what Devery wants on the show may not always agree and align, but in all
Yeah.
honesty, we both were doing a disservice. And I know for me, I just was feeling like as the person that brought in the show, I wasn't being I wasn't being transparent and like honest.
Yeah.
It's just like, I am not saying that I am miserable because I am feeling like I keep letting you down, because we're staying in this like stagnant space. Like, and it was like we didn't also know what we wanted to be. We like, okay, you're having this Devery, this mindset, but you don't even know what the goal is.
I remember feeling like it was possible that what we both wanted wasn't clear, but I was making assumptions about what you wanted. So I don't think that was fair. Like, I don't know that we were having different intentions or different visions for where the show was going to go, because we never actually sat and talked about, like, we never did a check-in for, okay, what are your expectations? What are you able to do? Like, how are you feeling? We didn't have that. And if we did try to have it, I'm not entirely sure that we were being as transparent as we should have been.
Absolutely.
And like, with that being said, I want to take this time, like, right now, and make a vow to you. And this is a vow I made to myself at the beginning of the year anyway. So I'm confident that I can really honor this. I promise you that in this working relationship and in this friendship as well, to be more transparent and honest with you. And I like making space to have those difficult conversations. And I think we owe it to each other to go through that discomfort together and push ourselves to get through it. So if we get a little angry, like, we get a little angry, but we like any other relationship, because I know that I have the capacity to do this in my romantic life. I've been intentional about it, right? I've been this way with my family members. I've been this way with my friends. Like, we need to be able to put it all out on the table and like walk through the discomfort together.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make that vow to you that that's something I'm going to be intentional about, because I've been under the false impression that things have to be delightful all the time in order for this to work. And so I think that I have withheld things that I thought would maybe, and I don't know how you'll react. I don't live in your brain, so I don't even know that that was true. I was just afraid that, like, oh, he might not like what I have to say about this. And so, I'm stuffing it, and that's just not fair to me, and it's damn sure not fair to you.
I know also I can at times be very tunneled in certain things as well. Like, when I am like, okay, Devery is moving, and sometimes not realize that, like, I need to get out of this, mindset, because I have this vision, I have these things, but, like, are you really working towards it? And also asking, how are you feeling? I think for me, I was afraid to ask to find the realities of it all. Because that was the thing as well, was I can take things, I can feedback and stuff like that, but it's like hearing someone not be satisfied with a project that you had created, it would feel like I did a disservice, So I think for me, I would walk on eggshells and try to internally work on things for you so that you would start to find motivation, but not really directly ask, how does Derwin want to show up in this space, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I know for me personally, I'm going to take the vow to be transparent in this space as well. And also ask, how are you feeling? What is this going on for you? Instead of trying to do it behind the scenes and try to, like, work on things and not know, if it's appropriate. So I know for me, that is definitely something I am working on, and I vow to work on in this show. Is I want this to be something that is groundbreaking, something that is very raw and unapologetic, and having these type of conversations with each other I think it's helpful, because we didn't know certain things about each other until we turned on the camera, or certain things. And we, like I said, we talk with each other, but we want to also be honest in these spaces. But I think for me, it was definitely, I try to fix things behind the scenes before someone can tell me that they are not satisfied. And that's not fair to you, because I am trying to control something that I am not in control of. And that is what I am working on in my life and my personal, professional. Is you have to be okay with the tough critiques, no matter how bad it is. Or my mindset is, I can handle it. Whatever life throws at me, whatever issues I'm facing, is you can handle it. You can handle it. You can handle it. So,
so proud of you. How are you feeling now? Like, we've had this conversation, and I mean, so you guys have witnessed, we've not talked about this. This is not a conversation that we've had. We've, of course, sort of connected about wanting to come back and do the show, but we never really got down into where the breakdown was. So I'm really happy that we've had this moment to talk this out. And I hope that this conversation can inspire anyone else who's gone through something similar in their creative process or in their business relationship with, a business partner. I'm hoping that this is something that you guys can relate to, and move forward in light with. So, how are you feeling now?
So first of all, I feel like a huge weight is off my shoulders because there's just been, I've been trying to play the puppeteer in everything. And I think for once in life, I am allowing life to life and not to feel that. So with the podcast specifically and with our conversation right now, I just feel like stop trying to be what people want you to be and be who you are. Because I consistently say at the end, it's the sigh of relief, sister. Like I'm just like,
I
girl,
know.
and I'm just like, it's the final. No, it feels
Countdown.
really good. Like, it feels really good to like just be authentic and just no repercussions. But how do you feel?
I'm so excited. I'm excited to create again. I'm excited to share opinions because D God knows I have so many of them. I'm really excited to see how we grow and transform. Like, there's nothing more exciting to me than taking on a new challenge, and feeling really optimistic about it. Um, I'm glad that we were on the same page in ways that we didn't anticipate, and that has illuminated solutions.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, clearly this is how we need to move forward. So I'm excited to see how that looks for us. I'm excited to see our team grow, because that was something that we wanted beforehand. And after we had taken the time, our prayers were answered. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see how we will continue to manifest the things that we want, because I'm very confident about like what we have to offer. This is an amazing show with an amazing purpose, and we have some gems. Like there are times when I go back and listen to episodes, I'm like, oh girl, you ate that. Like girl, we ate that, and we're gonna continue to eat, honey, because the
We
girls know who we
are.
are. Like this is that Black boy joy, okay?
Okay.
This ain't
And
no
it's
fly
so
by night shit. We put it together like, last night. Like the girls have been around for several years, honey, going strong. You can open the goddamn garage and see what we got up in there. See all the cars we got in the garage. Okay. Go down that list on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and see what the girls gave, because you're gonna eat.
okay. Because we
So
got
I'm
reviews.
excited that we can continue in this endeavor, with something that feels purposeful, that feels like home for me, that I can continue to pour into. And we don't have to start from scratch. We can just like build upon the legacy that we've already built. And I'm very confident that the people will resonate, it will resonate with the people. So I love you so much, sister. I'm so glad that we're moving forward doing this together.
Yes, I love you too. And first of all, people have been waiting for us to come back, and that's
They
the
have.
thing is the show is still there. Our episodes are still there. We have shot over 100 episodes of content.
Ding.
Ting, ting, ting. Like, okay, let me just, we've shot. So, like, so it's there. And, the show is going to always be special into my heart. So I'm super excited for what the future has in store for us. We have some amazing people behind us that are working with us as well. And just like ultimately ourselves. So I'm just excited for what the show has in store for us. And, we are here and we're back. And that is that. But of course, we want to end with you all, following our social medias and the Instagram and things of that nature. So for you all, if you want to learn more about me or chat with me, you can hit me up on my Instagram and Twitter at _Lord Every. That is _LORDEVERY.
And you guys know you can find me on Instagram at Derwin King. That's DERWINKING. And on Twitter at Free Negro. That's FREENEGREAUX.
And so our Instagram is being rebranded. So once it is up, you will be able to follow that. So I will not be saying the name of it just yet. But if you would like to hit us up on Instagram, watch our videos on YouTube, it is That Black Boy Joy on YouTube. And if you would like to send us an email, if you would like to be a guest on the show or just chat with us through the podcast, you can hit us up at thatblackboyjoypodcast@gmail.com. And as I always say, but I am learning to do it for myself, is to please be so in love with who you are.
Okay. Hey! I'm talking about the